We need to be civil with
How did we vote for the regions? Traffic cameras, the gambling bill, and education reform. How's it going in Iowa? It's Tom Coates Day. Brad Zahn from District 20 is our guest, and we're live on The View from a Pew.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
4 minutes after the hour. Welcome. It is Tom Coates Day in The View from a Pew, which means we talk local politics. We find out what's bugging Tom. Ooh. We could do. Oh,
we could do a what's bugging Andy. Well, we plagiarized.
Somebody stole that.
Yeah, Andy fails. We probably come over and pound a knot on both our heads.
Andy's a good guy. We don't want to do that. So anyway, the gold miser is in his room counting his gold, and he came out just long enough to join us today on The View from a Pew, Tom. So we appreciate you being here.
Oh, you're talking about me again?
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about Brad.
No, what did Bradshaw always call you? Duck miser? Or?
Oh, my Lord. There's another voice from the past that I'd soon forget.
Well, but what did he used to? It's
Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck. That's right. Counting his gold. There you go.
There's another knothead that I just as soon forget, Mac. I had to endure him for years when you were doing that show over there.
I can have him stop by anytime you want. He was just up here a little bit ago.
I know he is, and that's why I stopped by later.
I see. Brad Zahn from District 20 is in the house, and we want to talk about regents. We want to talk about traffic cameras. We want to talk about the gambling bill, education reform bill, and we want to talk about what you want to talk about. So the phone lines are open at 1-855-244-0077. That's nationwide. You're probably going to be able to use the local line at just 244-0077. Brad, welcome to the show today.
It's an honor to be on your show, and most importantly, from some of the news you just shared with me, that your show will be on XM and Sirius Radio, which I subscribe in one of my cars.
Do you?
So I plan on listening to that.
Okay.
And it's also good to be with Tom. Thank you for sticking up for all the issues, mostly gambling in particular.
Gambling KCCI leadoff story last night was what you guys had done on the gambling front. Some joker up there is moving to let the banned gamblers, the addicted gamblers, unban themselves, and you were one of two senators is all that voted against it. I couldn't believe
what was
that.
the bill for?
You want to explain it, Brad?
Yeah, what the bill was is currently you could sign a piece of paper. I've never seen this piece of paper that says that you admit that you have a gambling problem.
Oh, yeah.
And that you want to be banned from the casino for lifetime. And I assume that the gambling interests talked to some people, some fellow lawmakers, and what they did is they changed that to say that, well, you might have made a mistake. A lifetime ban is pretty stiff ban, and what it would do is you could elect to ban yourself for 5 years or unban yourself. And it was kind of like telling an alcoholic, okay, you've been clean and sober for 5 years.
That's exactly right.
And now go ahead and try it out again. So I did not support that, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous and the waste of taxpayers' time. With that, I just, that's why I did what I did.
Well, and you have to understand, I explained this. Of course, most of the good stuff got left on cutting room floor with KCCI, and I'm not criticizing them. I mean, Patrick Bell's a good guy, and they only had so much time. But what I explained was that the casinos in Iowa are a convenience location model versus the tourist that is employed in Vegas. And therefore, nearly half of a convenience casino model like what we have in 21 throughout Iowa.
That's just crazy. 21 casinos for 3 million people.
Are counting on problem and pathological gamblers for nearly half of the revenue. So when you have that model, and now you have a certain percentage of that hardcore group that is gambling to the point that they are supporting nearly half of your revenues, and they can remine instead of having those taken off the table after 5 years. Now we can pull those suckers back in and let that whole vortex of death and destruction start again. We're going to do it. And I said it's probably a few legislators that are overly and unduly influenced by the money and the power and the coercion that the casinos and their lobbyists will put up there. And probably many of the others, without really thinking this through, were allowed to, kind of follow along. But it's a terribly bad idea.
Yeah. And, I have a bill up at the Capitol that says that we would not allow any more new casinos in the state of Iowa. And I was interviewed in your backyard in Norwalk, where they made the announcement that they were going to try to have a petition to get the Racing and Gaming Commission to give them a license. And certainly what I don't think most people get is gambling in these casinos. And I'm no angel. My wife and I have been to Las Vegas, been out to Prairie Meadows a few times. It is not economic development. It takes more out of the community than it actually puts in. I recognize that they do give to some nonprofits out there.
Sure.
But the bottom line with me is we got, as you mentioned, Mac, we got too many casinos.
21 casinos for 3 million people.
21, and they want more. Lynn County passed the vote. We're going to have on May 7th one in Warren County. If both of those were granted, which I don't necessarily expect them to be by the Racing Gaming, we'd have 23. We have more per capita
than Nevada
slot machines, which is the crux of this. Those video slot machines are where 80% of the casino's revenue comes from. We have more of those in Iowa than just about any other state in the union, guys. Mm-hmm. And you're right, exactly, Brad. The economists that I trust on this, that aren't on the payroll of the casinos, have done the studies, and they say for every benefited dollar that you get in taxes or grants, you end up spending 3. Because all you're doing is redistributing the money that already was there. You're drawing it in like a black hole. In many cases, many of those casinos are owned by out-of-state interests, so they suck it on out of the state anyway. But when you start counting up the lost other business revenues and all of the social costs, you're losing 3 to 1. This is not like any other business. You open up a new restaurant, even a bar, anything like that, it generally is a positive economic generator. A casino is negative. And so what you're doing is you're putting a black hole and a blight right in the middle of many of these communities, and you're stunting their growth. You're not promoting it. And I don't understand why people can't understand that.
Well, are we going to look back at gambling in this period of our life, this 50 years or whatever, like we look at in the 20s when they took liquor away? Are we going to realize when we stand back 3,000 feet up and go, that was a terrible idea to try to ban liquor?
Well, no, I don't think so, Mac. That was a different matter. This is the third major wave of gambling in our nation's history.
Okay.
The first one was a national lottery that was instituted right after the Revolutionary War to pay for the Revolutionary War. They had such corruption and problems with that they recriminalized it. The second one was the settling of the West. And you've seen the movies and the
Sure.
TV shows where the saloon girls and all the gambling was going on. Yep. But many of the states, they had such problems with the crime and the corruption that swirled around it that many of the states that were allowed to come into the Union later were only allowed once their constitutions prohibited any form of gambling. And many have either had to ignore that clause in their constitution in their state or change it as they've opted into more gambling.
I take it Iowa wasn't one of them.
Iowa, I think initially at one point was only allowed in once they established part of that criteria. But Iowa has either changed or ignored things like casinos are not supposed to extend credit. Well, they showed the link, and the Attorney General's office agreed that the casinos were, in essence, facilitating the extension of credit with the credit cards.
Right.
The casinos sued to get around that. There have been some other things that they ignored or sued or changed. Race and Gaming Commission initially was set up to be a regulatory body on an entity that was inherently predatory. That's how Branstad set it up. Now, when Vilsack came in, and he had a lot of campaign debt back when he was first elected, Brad, you remember this, the casinos were kind enough to step up, and I understand, helped him pay off that campaign debt, but to pay them back, he had to fire the 3 Race and Gaming Commission members that wouldn't let Prairie Meadows put more slot machines out there, told them to get rid of their credit card machines, did this and this and this. fired him, put 3 people in there that wanted to do nothing but the best interest of the casinos, and it became, instead of a regulatory body, what I called a casino betterment league. And so we have done it step by step by step. The latest one is just one. They want to allow the addicted gambler, after his hitting bottom and admitting that I've got a problem, to, okay, now we can come back and try this again, as if the results are going to be any different than they were the first time around. 5% of the population are problem or pathological gamblers, and they're the ones that cross-addict. They're the ones that want to smoke next to the slot machines. They don't want them outside that vicinity. Don't try to talk about putting a smoking ban on the slots. Now, they'll do it on the card table or the ponies. They don't make any money there.
Right.
But where they're making 80% of their money, the slot machines, they're going to have them there with their alcohol, with their cigarettes, and they don't have
music and their
if they could,
auditory stimulants.
If they could help them go to the bathroom while they were still sitting on the stool pulling the handle, they'd do that too.
Tom Coates is in the house today, along with Brad Zahn from District 20, and as you know, Tom is no fan of gambling, and it's and who besides you, maybe a priest, sees the negative effects and destruction of gambling in Iowa? I mean, so many of your customers at Consumer Credit come there, and they've got gambling debt.
Yeah, and from 94 to 2000, we administered the 1-800-BETS-OFF hotline, so we saw it then, too. I've had different clients that went to prison, lost jobs, lost their families. 2 of them committed suicide, at least. The 2 that I know about, their stories in detail. So yeah, we've seen what happens, but I also see from an economic standpoint, Brad said it at the outset, this is not economic development. This is reverse economic development.
All right, so 2 guys voted against this bill today, you and Hatch.
It was yesterday.
Yesterday. Why did Hatch vote? I mean, he's a Democrat.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just, enough is enough. I mean, that's the bottom line with me. I recognize that it's reality that these casinos are here. Like I said, I'm no angel. I like to go out there from time to time, do a concert, but the only economic development that I do see that comes out of Prairie Meadows is the horse racing. I mean, there is a little bit of money. I understand that. I've always opposed that. But there is some economic development that occurs with that, with purchasing hay and horses and the horse industry as well.
But you understand that's how they shoehorn this thing in. Right. They covered up the studies that said you can't do a viable horse track in the late 80s. Right. They paid a group out of Minnesota $90,000 to tell them what they wanted to hear. They put it on the backs of the Polk County taxpayers. 2 years later, they went bankrupt. They said, now, do you want to pay these millions of dollars, or do you want somebody else? You want somebody else? We're going to put slot machines out here. The whole thing was phonied up to them from the get-go.
Yep.
Okay. What people don't recognize is that Polk County, our government, owns Prairie Meadows. And I've always questioned, my question is always, what kind of government bets against its own people?
Amen. That's well said.
I don't. I have many addictions in my life, but gambling isn't one of them. So I don't get it. I mean, I really don't get it. But the thing that made me so mad is when they did the smoking ban a few years ago. And I understood why establishments should go non-smoking. I understand, and it's worked out okay, except Prairie Meadows. The whole campaign with the Iowa Department of Health, for the health of the employees and the servers and all that. But how many people you got out of Prairie Meadows sucking in that secondhand smoke?
On that, it still should always been an air quality issue. If I had a bar or a bar restaurant and I had such a good ventilation system that I could demonstrate on a regular basis that the quality of my air was up to a certain standard, it should have been. I used to go into Mazzoti's, for instance, on Fleur. And you could go into Mazzoti's, you could eat over there, and you could never smell that smoke. It had such a fine ventilation system, it just sucked it right out. And it should have been an air quality issue, but the zealots wouldn't hear from it.
I agree.
But now here's where the zealots met the money and the muscle of the casinos. Their lobbyists got engaged. I had lunch a couple weeks ago with Wes Ericke, the president of the Iowa Gaming Association, all the consortium of casinos that aren't tribal. And he said, well, he mentioned the casino. He said out east, he said they caved in, they went non-smoking. He said 6 months later they had a bankruptcy sign on their door. And I said, I don't doubt it. But why that is important to understand. That's why I wrote that piece. It was in the paper 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, great piece in the paper a couple of weeks ago. Go to DesMoinesRegistry.com and look up that editorial written by Tom. All right, Frank's on the line. We're going to talk to him when we come back. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about those traffic cameras and also the education reform bill. Brad Zahn from District 20 is in the house. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. I know at 3:17 in the afternoon, you've got lots of choices that you can tune up onto the internet or on your cable system or on your radio, your satellite radio. And for whatever reason you're listening to this live or you've chosen this as a podcast, and we thank you. Couldn't do this job without you. Right here on The Truth, 99.3 KTIA, powered by webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Fight the good fight on a Rebels Cause Radio, Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on a rebelscause.com. A Rebels Cause Radio is edutainment.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour, Brad Zahn from District 20 is our guest, along with Tom Coates on Wednesdays. And let's go to the phones where Frank is standing by. Frank, you're live on The View from a Pew. How you doing today, Frank?
Good. I'll tell you a little anecdotal story. About a dozen years ago, a friend of mine encouraged me to go out to Prairie Meadows on all days Thanksgiving. I thought the place would be barren, but to my shock and dismay, the parking lot was busting at the seams. And I got in the building, and I would estimate a good third of the patrons there that day were on walkers, wheelchair, crutches, or on oxygen bottles.
Yeah.
Now, if you know anything about oxygen, generally if somebody's on oxygen, they're on their last leg. And you'd think that they would have something to do with their time and money, mend some fences, mend some, relationships, say something to a younger person that would encourage their walk in life before they pass on to wherever they're going. But no, they're out at Prairie Meadows. And you talk about the smoking ban, it just would look like to me they're trying to kill off people who are already almost dead.
That's a good point, because Frank's exactly right. The people that go out to Prairie Meadows, and not all of them, I mean, I go to Prairie Meadows to go upstairs to the top floor and play a little, poker.
But you can't smoke up there, can you?
Well, but I don't smoke anyway. But no, and I'm glad they don't smoke.
Then you know why they don't smoke up there. The casino doesn't make much money at it.
Yeah.
In fact, Vegas is shutting down the poker rooms out there because they're not making money. They're putting more slots in that space.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate to hear that. All right. Brad Zahn is our guest, District 20, traffic cameras. I mean, what did I hear the other day that somebody's suing the manufacturer of these machines? Is that right? Saying that.
Not familiar with that. I don't
something about somebody's adjusting the light timing.
Okay, that's something that is with a lot of research that I've done. That's happening all over the United States. What they're doing is they're shortening the yellow light. We're hearing now of these larger companies, and one of them, I think it's a company that does business with the city of Des Moines, and I can't remember the name of it right now. The traffic enforcement camera company in the city of Des Moines, that the top 6 people resigned from the company because they were getting paid off in Chicago.
Wow.
Which isn't surprising. This thing is just out of control. I'm really happy with the governor and the Department of Transportation because we have been unsuccessful to get any legislation through. And they are going to go through the rulemaking process, which typically I'm against because I think this is something that the legislature should address. But with that said, there's going to be some changes. They're just not going to let these things. You're going to have, from what I've told, I haven't seen it, that there's going to be requirements for cities that have to justify if they're going to put these traffic enforcement lights up. Or cameras up, and as well as maybe a limitation on the fines, and then some paperwork afterwards that did this affect the driving patterns in the area that they've been installed. Now, with that said as well, I am going to be offering legislation. We could still use amendments, and I will be offering legislation to get rid of these cameras. I just talked to one of my friends across the aisle, which is a Democrat. He said, Brad, if you get that thing here, I'll vote for it. I know I have the votes to ban them in the Senate. I assumed last year they did put it through the House. It is a nonpartisan issue. I actually see it as more of a generational. It seems like there's more passion for them with people that are a little bit older generations.
Wait, back up. You're saying that the older politicians are in favor of it?
No. I'm talking about the general public. It is nonpartisan, is what I'm saying. In the Iowa Senate chamber, I had the votes last year, and they ruled my amendment.
All right, so
to get rid of them.
Who would be the most fervent promoters of the speed cameras?
Well, the League of Cities is
people who don't have driver's licenses.
Well, that's not so true. The League of Cities are someone that's very vocal. The counties are very vocal.
It's a revenue generator, of course. Yeah.
They want that protected. The point I was trying to make, Tom, is that based on the feedback that I get from hundreds, if not thousands of Iowans on this particular issue, it seems like that the older generation kind of likes them, but the younger generation really doesn't like them.
Really?
Okay. All right. Okay. I want to be a devil's advocate with you.
Yes.
Because I may be of that mindset that I don't care if they're there or not.
Okay.
All right. So I live in Clive, and they put the first ones in on Hickman. I know for a fact that money goes to help lower my property taxes. Mm-hmm. All right. And if there's a cop sitting there, then I'm using up manpower that he could be helping children or taking care of drug busts or, whatever it is. And all I got to do is obey the law, and they don't have any impact on me.
That's a great argument. The only problem is when you get that violation in the mail, there is no due process. This country was set up on due process. To me, it's a big brother thing with cameras. I know that I recognize there's cameras everywhere. That's how they keep track of the traffic crashes on the I-235. I was on another radio show here about a couple weeks ago talking about this, and someone called in from Sioux City, said they borrowed their mother-in-law or their father-in-law's car in a funeral procession. Of course, you know how funeral processions are. They're controlled intersections because there's a yellow flashing light cars, and they got a ticket. The person got a ticket.
They're being waved through the intersection, but they still got the ticket because the camera wasn't
turned
on.
And they went in and appealed it, and it was ruled that and not in their favor, so they had to pay the fine. The proliferation, Mac, and I certainly understand your argument. I will have to bring it to your attention. It is very, very wrong that the city of Cedar Rapids takes those monies and puts them into the police pension fund.
Okay.
I think that's inappropriate and a conflict of interest.
Or in some cases, gone to the betterment of some of the judges, too.
Right. There is bills that are down there that it goes into the road use tax fund. It goes into for nonprofits. Another radio personality here in town suggested that money go into an uninsured motorist fund. Mm-hmm. So if you get into a wreck, I suppose that's okay. Those are all ideas. The fact is, and this is the most important thing that I want to communicate to you and all of your listeners, is that the laws are there and they should not be broken. Okay, I'm not advocating the people. There is the argument, hey, Brad, if you do drive the speed limits and don't run the red lights, which I traditionally don't. Not saying that I haven't made a mistake in the past, but I just think that they've gotten out of control. There's a community in southwest Iowa, a great community in southwest Iowa, with a population of 1,300 people, that the council right now is having the conversations of installing a red light traffic enforcement camera on the town square. I would really question if there's a lot of wrecks around that town square. And to me, and I've actually had the opportunity to entertain, at least try to get a reaction from the cities. And I had an amendment a year ago that I filed a couple days early on purpose to just get a reaction that capped the fine at $50.
Yeah.
And the cities always have said this is about public safety.
Exactly.
But when I put that amendment in place, they screamed like a mash cat. And the reason why they did is they don't want to be limited. In Sioux City, if you get a fine, it's up to $300. The average is $165. Now, if you're a multimillionaire, which you probably are, you could afford to get as many of those tickets as you want and break the law every day. Okay, and you're not going to be accountable to the Department of Transportation on the records, and you're not going to be accountable in regards to what the insurance company does on your premiums. So the whole system is broken. It's out of control, and something needs to be done about it. And
I was going to dovetail with what you said. I listened to an interview with, I think, Christine Hensley this last year, and the subject talk show host has been very fervent on that on WHO was in the afternoon, Simon. And Simon was questioning her, and she said, "Well, it's about safety, And Simon says, "Oh well, then we'll agree that we'll sequester all the money that comes in from the fines, and we'll donate something else rather than the city coffers or something that the city has to pay for." Oh no, and of course that's it. All of these jokers say that it's all about safety, all about preventing. I've questioned some of these surveys they've done that have shown a reduction in some of the accidents. I understand it might reduce certain accidents, but rear-end accidents are even more common with these cameras because you're starting to go through there. All of a sudden you say, here's a yellow light. Uh-oh, there's a camera. I slam on my brakes, and all of a sudden, bang, you get hit from the guy in back of you. So I think there's a pickup in that kind of accidents. It's not about safety, obviously. It's about revenue generators. And Windsor Heights, which is probably the worst we've got here in the area, wanted to go out and put some toll booths on 235, and thank goodness the DOT told them, keep your mitts off this. You can do your own, excavation for drivers' revenue elsewhere. You can keep your cameras off 235, and they sued them, didn't they?
They're in the process of going through a lawsuit. Two things that I want to add to the conversation that you said, Tom. One is that in Windsor Heights, it's unfortunate what they're doing there. What is more unfortunate is they've negotiated with Gatso. It's an out-of-the-country company. 62% of those ticket fines that the people send in goes to those camera companies. 62%.
And they have no heart. They at least Des Moines wants to give you some cushion at this point. Windsor Heights, apparently, probably, there's absolutely no leeway, is there?
The other thing I want to talk about is the accident report survey that was just released by the city of Des Moines. They show that there was more accidents on 235 up 5 years ago. If you recall, 5 years ago, we were in a major reconstruction of that freeway, and there probably was a lot more accidents.
Mm-hmm. All right, now
so it's an unfair comparison, apple and oranges comparison.
I've also heard, Brad, but it never has been confirmed, that in some cities, when you get a ticket and you want to go in and fight it, there's a fee that you pay up front, like a $50 fee to challenge the ticket.
It's an administrative fee with no guarantees. There's a lot of hardworking people that don't have the time to take off that day. These fines obviously hit the hardworking, lower income
regressive
people.
tax is what you're saying.
So that is correct, Matt.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Why can't we just call it a traffic tax?
It certainly would be clear, but the government loves to use euphemisms to describe what they're doing to you, not for you.
All right. Brad Zahn is our guest today. He's District 20 here in the central Iowa area. Tom Coates, my guest. When we come back, we're going to talk about the education reform bill, which just seems like a mouthful of marbles to me, but it's real, and it's something we have to do. And also the vote that happened here just today on the Regents, as this is a big question that's going on up there. Hey, do you use a smartphone? Do you wish you could listen to the programs here on Webcast One Live on your smartphone, but I'll be honest with you, it's kind of a hassle to download the Google and then put the name in and wait for it? Well, there's an app for that now. Currently available on Android and soon to be on Apple. Just look up webcast1live.com. I don't even think you need the .com. And push your smartphone, just push that app, and bingo, the audio will be there so you can hear Tom Coates every Wednesday afternoon from 3 to 4 on your smartphone, no matter where you are. Soon we'll have the video available, but the reason we don't have the video, and this is so far above my pay grade, I'm not sure I can understand it, but it takes so much more of the energy and the storage on the smartphones that they'll go dead if we run the video as well as the audio.
Too much power drain.
Yeah, so the audio is there. Go to your, I think it's called the Play Store on Android, something like that, and find the app that's webcast1live.com and download it, and you can listen to any of the programs anytime, including Iowa Legislative Review. Is that what the show's called that you participate in on Thursday?
That is correct.
Iowa Legislative Review with Art Smith and Kevin Hall, and you and some other legislators come in on Thursday afternoon, 4:30 to 5:30, and talk about some of these issues. It's a really interesting show. I mean, to hear, and they're all Republicans. So, you know, everybody's kind of agreeing with everybody, but yet when you guys do disagree, it's nice to hear the differences on that side of the aisle, not just the differences between the Republicans and the Democrats. So it's the Iowa Legislative Review with Kevin Hall and Art Smith, and that's every Thursday afternoon, 4:30, right here on webcast1live.com. All right, when we come back, Regents, Education Reform Bill, and more live here on 99.3 KTIA, powered by webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50,
80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We're the ones in the pew, not pulpit. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
22 before the top, Salem Radio Network News here on the Truth Network. And then at 4:03, Pastor Michael Mudloff with True Blue from Westkirk Presbyterian Church. Tom Coates in the house along with Brad Zahn. Brad, our senator here in the state of Iowa from District 20. I want to get to the regions and the educational reform bill, but I also want to get to a really nice, bold professional statement you made a week ago about not running for the Senate, not running for Tom Harkin's seat. Tell me why, because you're primed to lead us in Washington like you do in Des Moines.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying those nice things that I probably don't deserve. And it's very flattering to be considered for that position. You know, I got down the road. I had a lot of different Iowans that talked to me about encouraging me to run. Got a little taste of it when I ran for Congress. And actually started heading down the road. Had a lot of conversations with a guy by the name of David Polyansky, who works with Ed Rollins. Ed Rollins was involved as well, who, if you don't know, he ran Reagan's campaign. So I was very flattering from that standpoint. Now, I learned a lot of lessons last time. And one lesson is I'm not going to have a bunch of consultants that don't know what they're doing telling me what it can and cannot say at all times. But with that said, we actually got down the road, prayed a lot about it. I had 100% support from my wife, Dee Dee, talked to the kids about it, and we were ready to go. Well, I don't know what happened, but I just started, we actually had decided on a date that I would announce, and I just got cold feet. And the reason why I got cold feet is I started thinking about my kids. And I've got a son that's in college. I've got a son that's going to be a senior and another son that's going to be a sophomore. And quite frankly, for the first time in 17 years, I said, you know what? My public service is going to have to get behind my family. And doesn't mean you can't do both, because I have done both. But I didn't want to miss out on my son Grayson's senior year. I didn't want to miss out on being around Devin. And because I love all my kids, and Drew being potentially going to Iowa, and he's going to transfer.
And playing some football.
And no guarantees, but yeah, right. He's got that opportunity. But I just decided that I want to spend time, and I will never be able to take that time back that I lose. Right. And so I just said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I'm so happy I did. I felt like an 800-pound gorilla has been taken off my back. So, you know, God works in mysterious ways. I'm relatively young, although some days I wake up feeling like I'm 100 years old. But if there maybe is an opportunity, if God has a plan for me, I might do that 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, whatever from now.
Well, there'll probably be another one open up 2 years later.
So that's kind of why I did what I did, and I'm very happy in my decision. Plus, I've got a big job to represent the people of the 20th District with Grimes and Urbandale and Johnston.
It is.
And that is my responsibility. That's what I want to focus on. I am very, very liberated and happy that I'm not a leader anymore down at the Capitol. I don't mean that a leader. It's an elected position.
Of course.
And I'm independent to do what I want to do and say what I want to do. And quite frankly, I think I've enjoyed this year more than I've enjoyed any year.
All right. Well, the natural follow-up here, Brad, is the most likely candidate was Tom Latham. He stepped out early on. Steve King is looking at it. Kim Reynolds, perhaps some others. Who may or may not opt in. Give us your kind of your handicapping on the horses here. Who's going to step up and who's going to be the nominee?
Well, if I did that, it would violate some confidential conversations that I've had with all the people you talked about.
Okay.
I believe if I was going to handicap things, that there's probably going to be someone that we haven't even thought of that'll announce that they're going to run for
Steve Dace.
And Steve Dace.
And I think he's already announced that he's going to run or has intentions. But I do believe there's going to be someone out there, and certainly we have got to come up with a good candidate, because the bottom line, the reason why I was thinking about running, is someone has to go out there and stand up with courage and do the right thing for the next generation. And the responsibility of this disaster sits with the Republicans and the Democrats. And so I'm confident. That guy that's running now, I can't remember his name, starts with a B.
Braley. I mean,
okay, I can tell you,
we can't just cede this to Bruce Braley, can we?
This guy is more liberal than Tom Harkin.
That's right. Well, he's ass liberal. It depends on which subject you're talking about. But are we going to just switch one liberal Democrat for another here?
Well, let's hope not. And I'm going to do whatever I can to help out whoever that nominee is, and I'll be involved in that campaign as well.
Now, and I'm a friend of Steve Dace. I've been a friend and supporter of Steve Dace not all of his life, but for the last 20 years. Steve posted on his Facebook page 2 hours ago, serious question. If you were in my shoes, where do you think you could potentially make the most difference in our nation over the next 6 years? Could I make the most difference potentially getting elected to a 6-year term in the U.S. Senate, or on a radio program that could potentially air on 200-plus radio stations? He had 75 responses, and almost all of them said radio.
I would probably agree with that.
Well, man's delusional if he thinks he can run and get the Senate seat. He's just absolutely delusional, Mac.
Well, but every politician has to have their first race. And that race is usually not one you win.
Yeah, well, it normally doesn't start at the U.S. Senate seat either. Usually you start a little bit lower. Maybe you're running for city council or mayor, perhaps a House representative.
All right.
U.S. Senate, and you got Steve. Oh, my goodness.
Okay. Let me tell you what I learned about United States Senate. I've been told that running a United States congressional race versus United States Senate is like playing Little League Baseball to the major leagues.
I was going to ask you about that.
You really have to be prepared. They're saying that this race is going to be a $10 million race, which is ridiculous. And so you really have to have your ducks in a row and have the right organization, and you cannot rely on just people from Iowa. You have to have people outside of Iowa help you.
But see, Dace has those connections.
Yeah.
I mean, let me lobby. Tom, just keep your britches on for a second. Let me explain something to you.
Are you being serious, Mac?
You bet I'm being serious.
You think Steve Dace, first off, has any kind of a chance to win the Republican nomination?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't have King in there, and you don't have the lieutenant governor, and you don't have Brad Zahn, and you don't have Latham, who else? Who's the other big guns in the Republican Party in this state that are going to step up? Fong?
You really think that he? First off, he couldn't get the Republican nomination, and then he doesn't have a prayer of getting the general election.
Well, that may be. I think we said the same thing about Mr. Obama about 3 days before the Iowa caucus in 2007.
Well, we speculate a lot of things about Obama, but
in Dace, you have an incredible orator. You have someone whose confidence level is certainly greater than mine. You could call it arrogance if you want.
We can call it exceptional hubris.
Okay, but you got to stage and you got to start somewhere. And through Steve's eyes, and I haven't talked to Steve about this, but through Steve's eyes, if all the big guns step back, he's going to tell you that he'll take that as a sign from the Almighty that it's his chance to step up.
Well, maybe it's a good thing, because maybe get him off the air, and maybe that'll be a blessing to everybody.
Well, he'd only be off the air in Iowa. That's all the FCC says. He couldn't be on the air in Iowa. All right. So
how about Ed Fallon? Maybe get Ed Fallon in there too, huh?
Maybe they could run as a duel.
I think maybe, yeah.
Both each part-time radio,
That's
part-time.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Now you're being sarcastic.
A little bit.
Okay. Brad Zahn is our guest today, District 20. We've only got about a minute and a half left. Tell us what happens with the regents today, and then we'll do education reform in the last session.
Okay, we had a vote today in Education Committee. We have 3 Board of Regents candidates that the governor has nominated. I don't remember. One of them is a doctor from Fort Dodge.
Yep.
One of them is Mr. Kramer from Johnston, and the other one is Craig Lang from Brooklyn. We had the opportunity to interview them all. And we did have the vote today, and I voted against all 3 of them. The reason for that is, first of all, it was disappointing, some of the interviews that I heard. I would definitely say, if you might have had an opportunity to see what happened with Mr. Lang's nomination, is that he said that he didn't read some document because it was bad news, and that's the reason why he did not read this document. It was a document in regards to the Harkin Institute, and I guess I expect a little bit more out of my region, and he said I didn't read it because it's bad news. Well, I don't like to read, but you got to be in the reality world that we all live in.
All right, we'll finish that conversation, talk about Mr. Kramer, and then later the education reform bill. Brad Zahn is our guest from District 20. Tom Coates, a little sarcastic today, because if you drive by his house in Norwalk, there's a big sign, I love Steve Days.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling.
We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
10 before the top, Salem Radio Network News on the Salem Radio Network News Network. And then, of course, Pastor Michael Mudloff with True Blue from Westkirk Presbyterian Church there in Urbandale. Tom Coates in the house today, and you didn't see this because we were off camera, but Tom just called the Steve Dace campaign and ordered an extra big sign for his front yard in Norwalk. Jeannie Kane, that's a joke. Brad Zahn is here from District 20. You were telling me about the Regents vote, that you voted against all three of the Regent nominees.
Right, and it's just not, I never make decisions based on emotion or personalities. I really did this mostly to send a message to the governor that I'm sick and tired of being asked to nominate political contributors that are people that really, they happen to be, a lot of them, wealthy. Not that I have a problem with anybody. I want everybody to be wealthy. But it's political contributors every time that are Board of Regents nominees. And I've been asking for years that we need to get more parents that are pulling a checkbook out every month, writing checks to these Regents universities, and average ordinary Iowans on the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents has very little accountability.
Right.
They're accountable to no one.
Yeah.
It's just kind of an elite group of people that get together and raise tuition about every year. I've been very frustrated, been very public about the tuition set aside, which is a ripoff to everyone that pays tuition in the state of Iowa, where they're taking money from one person and giving it to another. I have no problem helping out students that are of low income I think it needs to be in a trust fund where I could donate to it rather than them sneaking in 20%.
So, are there any qualifications that a governor has to follow in nominating, or is it just anybody they want?
Well, typically there is a qualification in regards to the makeup of political affiliation. Which I believe he is, that one of the person that I voted against today was a Democrat.
Well, the Fort Dodge guy, I think, is a Democrat.
That is correct.
Kramer's a Republican.
Yeah, but I think your question goes to the pedigree of the candidate. Are they qualified in any way? That you're right. There's a political balance.
There's no qualifications, an educational background, and unfortunately, let me tell you, Governor Vilsack and Governor Culver were equally responsible for doing the same exact thing.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
I just think that we need to sit down and have a conversation about what the makeup of the Board of Regents is. I was happy that several years ago they added one student that's part of that makeup, which I think is a good move.
Is it a paid position?
It is not a paid position, but I've been told, I asked that question today, that you get very, very, very sweet tickets at any sporting event.
Well, and I know that Kramer's in construction, and he said himself he wanted to be on the Regents because there's going to be a tremendous amount of construction on all the campuses.
And I certainly agree that is very much needed because there is a lot of spending that's going on. One of the questions was asked about, environmentally sound buildings are LEED certified, which no one in the private sector could afford, mostly the platinum level, and then the project labor agreements. Listen, I reminded the Board of Regents that were interviewed yesterday, you're responsible to the taxpayers of the state of Iowa, regardless of LEED certified or project labor agreements. It isn't personal, like I said, but I am just had enough, and I just voted against all of them today.
Good for
you.
you.
You didn't think that, for instance, Robert Kramer had a conflict of interest, perhaps, with his construction and his position on the Board of Regents?
Well, that would take him out of bidding on any of them.
Absolutely not. Robert Kramer builds bridges, and that I'm familiar with, and we need someone in there with his type of background. It is not personal to Mr. Kramer.
Okay.
Typically, I side with him. He's a Republican, and so anyway, and I know Mr. Lang very well. What's frustrating is they did do away with the tuition set aside, but they also are holding the legislature hostage that we put the same amount of money, and there's been no conversations about equally dropping the tuition amount 20%, which is the average of all the three Regents universities.
All right, the education reform bill. We've only got about 3 minutes left here. Tell us why we should be for or against it.
Well, first of all, my education reform bill does two things. It shuts down the Department of Education, and it creates a scholarship program for parents to pick what school is the best for their education opportunities. Bottom line, the reason why Iowans should vote for this is that it is a 100% local control bill, public, non-public. It allows the people that we elect on the school boards to figure out what's best for their students.
About your system, Brad?
I'm talking about the Department of Education, shutting that down. Okay. Then there is I don't like to call it that word I won't use. It's a scholarship program. So it allows parents to pick what school is the best school, public or private, including homeschool. And the reason why parents should be for this is because it is true education reform. Until we have a conversation about two major issues, we have great teachers out there. But what we have is we've mandated terrible teaching methods. We got to get back to phonics, new math, and the curriculum problems that we have there. The curriculum is bad stuff, and the core curriculum is garbage. It's not successful. We get rid of those two components and have that serious conversation, then we will have student performance increase in the state of Iowa. And unfortunately, the governor's proposal, the House proposal, and the Senate Democrats' proposal will do nothing to increase student performance in the state of Iowa.
Is that measured by the SATs? And the ACTs?
It's measured. Obviously, it's measured by the tests that kids take, and that is not always 100% measurement, because I always typically didn't do that well at tests. Not that I'm doing any better, but that is the biggest argument, Mac, is that how do you measure students? You got special ed students, you got a lot of challenges that are going out there.
Well, Jonathan Narcissus is a friend of mine, and I remember when he was on the school board, and he just railed that the way the school board presented information to the public via the media about success rates in education was all bunk.
Well, you could manipulate those numbers all you want. And
Brad, what state is doing what you want to do? Can we emulate somebody that is stepping out more like you want to do it right now?
Nebraska.
First of all, the state of Massachusetts have definitely made some changes, not with a scholarship. I would have to say the one that I'm trying to copy right now is the state of Arizona. State of Arizona just started a scholarship program with just special ed students. It was overwhelming. The parents that wanted to participate in that and picking what schools that they wanted to. Before we go, I know we don't have much time. I want to thank you, Mac, for allowing me and my colleagues to come in and have a show every Thursday at 4:30.
You bet. Glad to have you.
You're very generous. You've been a very, very good friend through the years. I am blessed to have you in my life. And I say the same about you, Tom. You've always been a great supporter. You are right on all the gambling issues. And hopefully we'll get some more people that have like thinking and we can make some changes.
Well, I was sitting here listening. I was sitting here listening to you today, and I'm so glad you're my representative because your passion is genuine. And why would somebody want to do your job? I don't know. I don't know why you'd want to do it, but you have a passion for it. You enjoy it and you like it, and you're a wonderful service to our community. And I'm glad you decided not to run for Senate, and you'll always be happier with that decision as a dad.
Yep,
always.
I definitely know that.
All right, Tommy. See you next Wednesday. King David, good job today. Deacon Dennis, thank you. Brad Zahn, District 20. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Remember, do one thing for me, would you, today, please, before the sun goes down or right afterwards? Pray.